Today I sit down with Deepak Suthar to discuss health and fitness. We discuss entrepreneurship, alternative education, franchises, and his company, LevelUp. But I also wanted to dig deep into various next-generation workout technologies, such as Osteostrong and X3, as well as some nutritional advice to boot. This may feel a little like an advertisement for Osteostrong or X3, but honestly, I really just like what John Jaquish has built and use it regularly. So bear with me and hopefully you'll learn something along the way. With that, please meet Deepak Suthar. Hello and welcome to the Arsenic Show. Today I have Deepak Suthar. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic.
Yeah, so good to have you. I've been trying to get you on the show for at least 2 seasons. We finally made this happen.
At least 2 seasons, and I appreciate the follow-up.
Well, I think this is a fun one for me because we're going to be talking about physical health, which is not something I typically talk about in this show very much. Or very, very occasionally in context of something else, right? Like policy or something. So this is a fun one for me. But before we go down the physical health side, you actually started much more in my world, in software development and building companies and stuff. So I think it would be good to spend a little time there, if you would indulge me, and talk a little bit about your history.
Yeah, absolutely. History goes back, when we start from my technology stuff, like the first thing I think of when I think of, oh, hey, where'd you start in technology wise? First thing I think of is it's like 1980 something. My brother is starting to code something on a Commodore 64 and I'm just watching him and I'm just like, oh my God, that's the coolest thing I've ever seen. And then he starts playing a game off of a tape. And I don't know if you've ever played a game like on a cassette deck, popping it in there, like every move took like 5 minutes.
Yeah, right.
Talk about delayed gratification.
Right.
But that was kind of like the very, very beginning. So, and I don't think I've ever told him this actually, but it was like the first time I really got interested in it was because of him. And he's 6 years older than I am. So he was, he's incredibly smart, like genius level. Mm-hmm. And I just watched him, and he was coding and he was playing and he was coding and he was playing. And then he left to go to college and he did computer science, and I didn't know what I wanted to do at that point. And before I even got into tech, I've always been kind of like this adventurous mindset. I've always had this adventurous mindset where I wanted to be on a lifelong trek of just chasing treasure, right? We were talking about this earlier, like why is Goonies one of my favorite movies? It's because these kids were constantly on an adventure looking for treasure. And
for those listeners, as opposed to viewers, you are wearing a Goonies shirt. That's why this is
never say that, guys. Never say that.
We're going to get a call from the studio lawyers soon. Thanks, guys.
So through my teenage years, I was like, after my brother left, the computer gaming kept continuing. So I kept playing, but then the coding kind of stopped, right? So I kind of fell off of the productive route into computers, but I kept playing. And then that led me through high school, and I was like, okay, what do I want to do? So I end up in Austin, I end up at UT, and everybody's like, what's going to be your major? What's going to be your major? And I'm like, I have no idea. And they're like, why don't you do computer science like a brother? And I'm like, all right, done.
Easy.
And that was the first time I had to go into a learning environment to where I was actually coding and doing all of the things. And the funny thing about it is I hated it. Like I didn't like it at all. I was doing pretty good, but it didn't satisfy like my curiosity and like the adventurous spirit I had. So 2 years into it, I'm like, hey, like I'm a sophomore at school and I'm just not liking this whole educational system. And I just don't feel like it's teaching me the things that I really needed to know to be successful. Cause I'm reading stuff outside of school things. I was getting my Microsoft certification, my Cisco certification. I was doing all of these certs that they didn't even offer in school at the time. And I was just learning and learning and learning. And then I got my first job. And I was like, hey, I need some cash because I was partying a lot at the time, but I had no cash. So I was like, okay, I need to figure out how to get myself a part-time job. So I got a part-time job. And this is one of my favorite jobs of all time, like to this day. The funny thing is, and I didn't know why, I started out as a little help desk guy. And I was just, because I knew a little bit about computers and I could fix things. And this is when we were transitioning from Windows 3.1 into Windows 95, and things were getting really interesting from a networking perspective. So that's when I started going through and I got all the certs, and I had an incredible mentor at this company. One of the things that I've been really blessed with is that at all of these different companies, for the majority of the time, I've had incredible leadership. And I did not get to where I am today by myself. And I just want to shout out to every person that managed me, supported me, guided me throughout this entire process.
Any names of note that are worth mentioning?
Oh, man. So the first one that started with was David Bird, and then Steve Arshad, and then Mark Reynolds was an incredible, incredible guy. The boss, Casey Hoffman, he kind of showed me, like, this is what it means to run a multi-million-dollar company. And I'm just the help desk guy. And I'm learning from these people that are just so far ahead of me. And it just really got me thinking. And I'm like, how do I get further faster? And for me, college wasn't it. So that's when I decided to quit. I'm like, okay, I'm learning way more outside by going through these books and just learning, self-learning, and taking all these certification tests. Now I'm making some real money because now I've got these things called certifications back when they were worth something.
Yeah.
And people that I knew that were graduating college are like, you're making what? Like, how are you doing this? And I just kept going, and I just kept going. And from one company to another, that first company, I was so lucky. God, I can't tell you how lucky I've been like through my entire life, but there's just this one lucky roll after another. And this first company, Child Support Enforcement, it was a portfolio company of Austin Ventures at the time. And I met the guy who ran technology over at AV. And he and I became really good friends because, we were learning from each other. He had just moved into town. So we were hanging out and we were just learning so much from each other. But that relationship was one of the first times I realized how important it is on who you spend your time with. And he was an incredible mentor for me, Dave Benton. He's an incredible, incredible guy. And from that point, that was my very first startup company that I had joined. And then that went through one company to another company, to another company, to another company, to 14 companies later, I tried to start my own. And that's when things started to get real interesting.
So somewhere along the line, I don't want to jump too far ahead, but I think it's interesting. You decided you wanted to get involved with health.
Mm-hmm.
So what was sort of the bridge between, like, was that just a personal, like, I need to make sure I'm healthy kind of thing? Or were you looking for things in that space, or like what kind of got you down that path because you can see technology versus health. I mean, they very rarely overlap like very well, it's like you might have a website or something, you might have a blog, but they're usually not hand in hand.
Yeah. So I didn't get into it because there was a bridge. I got into it because I burned a bridge. And throughout my career in technology, I got burned out. Like I got to the point to where I was making more money than I ever made before. I had a really easy job that was kind of rinse and repeat, but I just wanted more. I just wanted something else. And I can't sit I can't sit by myself in some place where I'm not growing. So at that point, this is kind of when I kind of dove into this personal development world, and I went to a Tony Robbins conference. I went to my first conference, and I learned like instantaneously the thing that I was missing.
Which was?
Contribution. I had been working my tail off, and through the startup years, through the 70-hour work weeks, like doing all of that. But at the last job I had, I just wasn't contributing to anybody else but myself and my family. And I just felt empty inside. And I had to go to a 4-day conference with like 16 hours a day to finally identify what that was. But that was, another one of the greatest gifts that I've ever been given, is just understanding that we all have needs. And, he talks about this thing called 6 human needs. And one of the needs that wasn't being met was contribution, because there was really nothing that I was doing outside of like the once a year Habitat for Humanity or once a year Mobile Loaves or, whatever that was. I don't really consider that contribution. I consider that like checking the box. I think it's a bullshit thing. I wanted to do more. And that's what got me on this search for what else can I do? Because right now I'm dying inside.
Okay, so this is kind of interesting. Once upon a time, I was doing some research on happiness. It was probably about 10 years back or so. And I found somewhere they had some list of like 15 different, I'm guessing the real number is 15, whatever number was 20, whatever different subcategories of happiness that kind of roll up into kind of 5 major categories, if memory serves, 6, maybe whatever it was. Mm-hmm. And so I felt like I had a pretty good handle on how I felt about myself and what things made me happy and what didn't. And, certain things I'm like, nope, don't care at all about that. It does not matter to me one bit. And other things I'm like, that matters a lot to me. Right. And so I ranked and rated it. And then I graphed over time how happy I was. And if I ever saw anything on the major metrics, on the 5 or 6 major metrics, and if I ever found there was a day where the math did not possibly add up, I'd go back and go, okay, there must be something inside, like deeper in, one level deeper, that I got wrong. Like I thought it didn't matter, but apparently it matters more to me, or matters way less to me than I thought if it went the other direction, right? Like I thought this would matter a lot, but it apparently does not matter. So one day the regression went totally south. Like there's just no way this math makes sense. So I went back and I was like, what is it? Because I had a really, really good day. And I'm like, my math just does not add up to me having a good day. There's nothing in here that would make this number make sense. Yeah. And I looked in, and one of those numbers was, one of the metrics was something like acts of kindness or acts of service or something like that. And when I first put my number in there, I thought what it was like giving change to the homeless or something. I'm like, right. Hell no, I'm not doing that. I've always thought you should fix things at a macroscopic level, not a microscopic level. That's just me. I know a lot of other people prefer working one-on-one with individuals, but just not me. I've never liked it. I've always liked choke points, big, meaty things where I could solve, millions of people's problems, not just one person.
People want to do the easy, and it's easy for you to roll down your window,
right?
Hand $1 bill.
I've never gone the easy route, but this one day I was like super, super, super happy. I'm like, what is going on? And I realized this piece of software that I had been working on trying to get the browsers to roll out had finally done it. And it's called Content Security Policy. And now it is in every single browser everywhere on the planet. And your phone, my phone, it doesn't matter who you look at. If you walk downtown Austin, every single person there has been positively impacted by this thing that I finally got rolled out. And it was one of those choke points, right? Now, it's like I just solved 1 billion people's problem. They didn't even realize that it was happening. It was happening behind the scenes. It was just automatically rolling out. It was this annoying update that they don't want to update and eventually kind of have to, right? But I considered myself to be a billionaire, not in the $ sense, but in the sense that I'd actually impacted 1 billion people's lives positively.
Sure.
And so that's when I went back and like, okay, these numbers, I so don't understand myself. I got to really rethink this. Like, what really drives my happiness? And so that kind of dovetails in what you're saying, your contribution.
Yeah. Yeah. So, for more context on kind of what those 6 things are, there's certainty, there's uncertainty, there's love and connection, there is significance, and then there's 2 spiritual needs. So the 2 spiritual needs are growth and contribution. So if you ever find yourself in a funk, you're probably lacking in one of the 2 spiritual needs. You're probably not growing, and you're probably not contributing to yourself. So, and this was exactly what I was going through, because I had the certainty that I was making money. I had the uncertainty to where I didn't know where we were going to get deployed next. Like we're putting in historical horse racing across the world. And I had the significance of I was one of the best in that field. And I loved that. Like that was awesome. The love and connection was there. I was connecting with my team. I was connecting with the people that I've been working with for, over 2 decades. And I love that piece. And it was just such a realization to just understand that how important these 2 spiritual needs really, really are. And I still track this today. Like anytime that I feel like I'm in some kind of funk, I'm not growing or I'm not contributing. And it's just every single time because I'm thinking about me. Like anytime that you're sad and you're not doing one of these 2 things, you're thinking about yourself. And, I'm trying to break that habit. So that's kind of the background of where that comes from.
That's interesting. So we'll get to Osteostrong in a minute. You did mention ditching college and just doing the self-education route.
Yep.
So I know there's a lot of people who are like, you've got to get your education. You got to go through the 4 full years or whatever.
Sure.
I too was a college dropout. And I would say that better than half of the people I interact with that are at like extremely high technology capabilities dropped out or didn't even go at all.
Yeah.
So where do you see college? Is it necessary? Is there a reason to go, or you just like don't go? Like what's your opinion on it?
This is my next legacy. This is the one thing that I'm going to be working on, that I'm already working on, not I'm going to be working on. The short answer to your question is, let me rephrase the question.
Sure.
Do kids need an education?
Yes.
100%.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, absolutely. Is college the best way to deliver said education to every single student? The answer is no. And for me, I have this, because I've done this for so long and because I've been thinking about this for so long, and I have this opinion not because I left 2 years in, I have this opinion because there is this dogma of, for you to be successful, you have to have X, and that is a degree. And I think you and I both know that that's complete horseshit. Now, what should kids be getting? That's an interesting question.
Yeah.
Because I would switch that around and I would say, let me ask you a question. You have children. Are your children getting the absolute best education for their future right now?
Probably not.
Yeah. I don't think there's a person out there that can say that.
Well,
I don't think they can say yes.
I regularly ask questions that I just assume somebody at their grade level would know, and they have never heard of them, but frequently, not just once in a while.
Right.
Ooh, geez, what are they teaching them?
But then you think about it and you're like, okay, what should they be learning for them to be truly successful in whatever field that they decide to go in? And yes, I understand that if you want to be a lawyer, there's certain things that you have to do. You have to go through the bar exam.
Or a doctor.
Or a doctor. You have to do that. Yep. And, I've talked to so many people, kids also, they're like, oh, hey, I want to be a doctor. And I'm like, okay, cool. Tell me why. Why do you want to be a doctor? Like, oh, I want to help people. I'm like, great. That's beautiful. How many people do you want to help? And they're like, I don't know. If I see one patient a day, maybe that's 300 patients a year, 300 plus patients a year. I'm like, that's awesome. So you get to help 300 patients a year. That's beautiful. I'm like, well, what if you could help 600 patients a year? Would that be even better? And they're like, yeah, that would be even better. And I'm like, what about 6,000 patients a year? Would that be even better? And they're like, yeah, of course. But how can I do that? I'm just one doctor. How could I do that? I'm like, well, if your goal is really to impact other people, to impact as many people as you can, and you're just one person, should you be a doctor?
Probably not.
Or should you own the hospital? And do you need a medical degree to own the hospital? No, you don't. And then they're just like, oh, man. And then I get yelled at by the parents. They're like, no, stop telling my kids they don't have to go to school. And, you know, I've had so many philosophical conversations about college. Like, this is a hot button for me. Mm-hmm. And for every time they're like, well, you know, you gain valuable skills by going to college. And I'm like, okay, tell me one. Tell me. Like, well, you gain social skills. And I'm like,
yeah,
really?
I hear that one a lot too.
I'm like, you gain social skills?
But people like will really hang their hat on that one. Like, yeah, but this is where you're going to meet your wife or whatever. Like, no, really, that's a real, very serious argument for why you should go. I'm like, I feel like I didn't meet any girls really that I had any long-term relationships in college. like they all came afterwards.
I hear social skills and I hear networking.
Yeah, I hear that one a lot too, especially if you're going through an MBA program.
Yeah.
I learned to drink. Does that count?
It does count. That's part of the social skills.
There you go.
That is a skill. It may not be a beneficial skill in the long run, but it's definitely a skill. So when I talk to these folks, you know, I'm always looking at, okay, what outcome are you after for your child? And if the outcome for your child is for them to network with people that will help them in their future, why on earth would you leave it to happenstance to put them into a 4-year degree and just hopefully that they run into somebody that they can connect with over the rest of their life? Why would you leave that to chance? Why wouldn't you just be intentional about it and put them into a group of people that are already there, that you know that these guys are these people are already qualified, and intentionally put them in that environment and then let them develop their social skills with people that will be their lifelong friends, that will be their mentors, that will be the next big thing. Why would you leave it to happenstance? Why would you leave it to chance?
So, okay, I'm curious. How does it work?
So one of the things that I learned when I went to this Tony Robbins event, there were 15,000 people at this event.
Wow.
And there's one thing that...
Is that pretty typical?
It is, yeah.
Wow.
And there's another one coming up in Dallas, November. You should come with me. I'm actually taking my kids. But there's one thing that all of these people have in common. You remember there's 2 spiritual needs. One of them is growth. When you go to these events, everybody there wants change. And not your average ordinary person does not want change. So now you're kind of separating people into, you're removing the chance equation out of this. You're like, okay, I'm going to be surrounding myself with people that have a growth mindset, which is a beautiful thing. And then not only that, there are people there that are in orders of magnitude wealthier than, you know, all of us here. And there are programs there, and this isn't the only one, by the way. I'm just using this as one example. But there's a program there that you can join this group and be a part of this group of 800 people that are arguably the best of the best in what they do. And they all have a growth mindset and they all have a contribution mindset. So when you go into this group, everybody is just another human. But if you ask for help, this is where, hey, here's my hand. I will help you up. there's no chance. Like you're taking the chance out of this equation, and now you're putting yourself into an environment where you're intentionally being surrounded by the people that you're going to enjoy the rest of your life with. And they're going to help you up and through these things. And then, and by the way, you're going to learn all these different skill sets. So back when I was talking about, what I want my legacy to be, I want to shift public education. I think public education is a travesty. I think a lot of private education is the same. It's just more expensive. Mm-hmm. However, I think I can fix that, because the things that I've learned over the past 7 years are things like emotional intelligence, financial intelligence, marketing, contract, business, relationships, networking, all of these things that don't have a traditional class. But you learn them in the course of a year. And with these skills, these critical life skills that you use every day, you can choose to do whatever you want. If you have this
in an entrepreneurial mindset,
if you have this as even if you weren't entrepreneurial mindset, even if you just want to be an employee, you want to be a great employee, you still need every single one of these skills. You need to be emotionally intelligent. You need to understand how to speak publicly. You need to understand how persuasion works. You need all of these things, but these are the things that they don't teach. You need to understand how your body works health-wise. This is a vessel that's going to take you through the rest of your life. Are you going to beat it up? We all did a little bit in college. But now we know that if we want to have an impact on the greater good, and we want to have this ripple effect on the rest of the world, it starts here. But do they teach that? No, they don't.
So when you say you're going to impact schools, do you mean literally existing schools or a brand new, completely different kind of school? Like, what's your plan there?
So our kids go to a private school that we take them to. And
the bad school that's more expensive. Got it.
Not necessarily bad. Could be better. But there needs to be somebody leading this charge on teaching them what emotional intelligence is, how to speak in public, how to frame a pitch to venture capitalists. So many of these little things that just don't exist. And I'm going to create the program that is going to support kids through this. So when I say I'm going to attack this, I want to start with kids that already have that mindset of, I may or may not go to college. Doesn't matter. But I do understand that everyone that I know that is successful has some level of this foundation already. And some of them, like me, it took me 40 years to get access to this type of education. And that's where I think it's just a travesty. Like, it shouldn't be relegated to people who can spend $100,000 a year on coaching. This should be available to everyone.
So it's going to be online, you think?
I think it's going to start online, but I think there's a lot of face-to-face that it's important. I don't think it's just, a class that you just throw online and people just go buy it. I think that's a foundational level. Like, so this is the difference between knowledge and wisdom, right? If you watch a video, you got some knowledge, but do you have any wisdom? No, because you haven't exercised it. You actually haven't done it. And a lot of those soft skills, like, how do you measure leadership? Like, if you were going to create a class on leadership and you were going to try to teach children, how would you measure it? Mm-hmm. So it gets really interesting and really tricky on how to do that. And some of those things, maybe, ChatGPT will get to this point pretty soon, but it's not quite there yet. So maybe it's a panel of, me and you and Chris listening to a child do a pitch or try to persuade. And there is some sort of subjective grade based on some kind of rubric. And there's so many people. Every time I tell the story about, how I want to shift public education, everyone's like, how do I get on board with this? I'm in. Like, let's go do this. And I'm like, well, I've got 2 other companies right now.
Yeah.
I'm just not quite there yet.
Right.
But the bones of it are there. Like I'm starting to build out this. I actually have a curriculum that I've already kind of built, and I can teach a lot of this, but I don't want to be the linchpin. I want this to grow past me. But I just want parents to be able to see that, hey, look, college is not the only option. It is a option. What do you want for your child? And just understand that there are probably 1,000 paths to get to that outcome that you want for your child. Don't just do the things that everyone else is doing so you can tell your sister-in-law, oh, hey, my kid's going to Harvard. Like, oh, well, great. It's awesome. But some of it just becomes a story of just like, hey, I'm going to send them to school because I just need to be able to answer that question.
Right.
Because it's a cultural thing.
Yep. So why entrepreneurship? Why is that a path that you think people should go down?
So it's either 2 paths, right? I think it's either you're going to be an entrepreneur or you're going to be an employee. There's really no other path. I guess trust fund baby, like maybe that's the third option.
Instagram model.
Yeah, Instagram model. The OnlyFans. Have you seen my feet? Like, they're pretty amazing. But
I have.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, this is not that kind of show.
It could be. It could be. The night is young.
But I don't think, people learning skills that lend themselves to be an entrepreneur, I don't think they have to become an entrepreneur. Like I said earlier, even if you are an employee, you want to do really well in your role. And having the skill sets of an entrepreneur will allow you to perform way better than other employees that do not have those skill sets. In emotional intelligence across the board is critical in any company. Being able to communicate effectively to all the way up to the CEO to all the way down to the guy sweeping the floors is critical. Business strategy, critical. Every one of these things that I believe that every 14-year-old should start learning today, it works in both arenas, whether you want to be an entrepreneur or you want to be an employee. And I think some people will just default and say, I don't want to be an entrepreneur. I just want to work for somebody. But I like asking questions. So I'm like, well, why? Why do you want to do that? Inevitably, it comes down to this. There's a fear mindset of, well, if I do that, I might fail. But they don't understand the whole story because they haven't been taught the whole story.
Well, statistically, they're right. They will fail.
They will fail. But you can only succeed at the highest level if you fail.
Yep.
But that's the big thing. Like, they don't tell you that.
Yeah.
Because failing,
you're probably going to have to fail twice, too.
You're
Sorry about that.
Have to fail a lot.
Well, statistically, it's twice fail, and then the third time will be fine. But yes, your point is absolutely. You're constantly failing. If you're failing upwards, you're probably failing in the right direction.
Yeah, and what if you just gave failing a different meaning, right?
Learning.
Yeah. Maybe that's the only failure. If you don't learn something from the failure, that's the failure. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, you're just going to do it again, and you're going to do it better. And you'll just get better. Mm-hmm. So this is a concept that I think has been lost in today's generation, which is grit. So if you just do the same thing over and over and over and over and over, you will continue to move forward. But I don't know if you've seen this or noticed this, but there's just a lack of grit. I don't know of a better way to say it. It's just people just don't want to continue to push. They just want things that are just easy. And I think as a parent, I'm guilty of that. Like, I caused that. That's my fault. So I'm reversing a lot of that right now. You know, my kids are 14 and 16 years old, and it's not a great time to try to reverse stuff. But I think it's important. So now we're putting in things into place, you know, at the house, and, you know, there's responsibilities, and, hey, we want you to be a productive member of this household, right? Because eventually you're going to be a productive member of society. So let's start now.
What would be an example?
So, for example, they both have chores, right? And if they don't complete their chores, then there's no allowance, right? You don't work, you don't get paid. You still got to do the work. You miss deadlines, you don't get paid, but you still got to do the work. So my son is responsible for doing the dishes every single day. My daughter is responsible for doing the laundry for the house every single week. And they decided that those are the two things that they were going to do. I'm like, great. All you have to do is just be consistent. It doesn't take a whole lot of time. But I want you to understand that you doing this mundane task, but doing it consistently, is one of the most important skills you'll ever learn in your life. Yep. If you can just power through these mundane things. What did I read the other day? It's like, you know, the people that are the wealthiest know how to do the most boring things without thinking that they're boring, and they'll just continue to do them. And the boring things make you rich. The new exciting things rarely make you rich. And I'm guilty of that too. Like, I'm like, oh, squirrel, shiny penny. Oh, I have another idea.
It's a real risk when you're an entrepreneur, because you're like, I could start another business. Like, no. Focus on the one you're working on. Okay. Yeah. Well, let's talk about Osteostrong. Before we get to the business mechanics of it, let's talk about what it is first.
Sure.
So how did you first hear about it? What is it? Give me your backstory on that one a little bit.
Yeah. So when I was at another Tony Robbins event, I was walking around with a buddy of mine, and there was this equipment just laying out on the floor, and it looked like gym equipment. And I was like, hey, this looks interesting. So I talked to the guy, and I was like, hey, what's this all about? And I met this guy. His name was Dr. Jaquish. And he was like, oh, you know, I invented this stuff. And I'm like, oh, cool. Tell me about it. He's like, yeah, so I invented this stuff to save my mother's life. And I'm like, all right, I'm a mama's boy. You got my ear. Tell me more. He's like, well, you know, this equipment, I invented it because my mother had osteoporosis. And he's like, do you know anything about osteoporosis? I was like, nope. No, nothing about it. He's like, well, it's a deconditioning of the bone. And for the longest time, the medical community thought that it was a disease. So they still classify it today as a disease. But the way that he describes it is it's just a deconditioning of the bone.
Interesting.
And I was like, that is interesting. And he's like, yeah, you know, if you didn't have any muscles, would you have a muscular disease? I'm like, no, you're just deconditioned. Just go work out and you'll build muscles. And I was like, okay, so tell me more. And he's like, yeah, so we developed this, and the things that it helps with, obviously, for osteoporosis is the loss of bone density.
And osteopenia.
And osteopenia is pre-osteoporosis. So those two things are incredibly important in the women's world. So there's a statistic, and this is from the CDC, not from us, but it's after the age of 55, if you break a hip after the age of 55, you have a 1 in 5 chance of dying within a year.
That's crazy.
In a year.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It's insane. And nobody's talking about it. So what has the industry been doing about it? They've been handing out magic pills that are supposed to support bone growth, but they don't. They do very, very little, and the majority of them actually do the opposite of what you want.
And they have side effects.
And they have massive side effects. Mm-hmm. So he created this set of machines that was a holistic approach to reversing an irreversible disease. And I was like, oh, that's pretty interesting. So now I have like this picture of my mom up, and she had osteopenia at the time. I was like, all right, check. And he's like, it also helps with fibromyalgia. I'm like, shit.
How's that?
Check.
How's that?
So I don't want to go too deep into the why, but
Sure.
there's all of these things happening inside of the body that we don't fully understand yet. When you start strengthening the musculoskeletal system, which is your bones, your tendons, and ligaments, and your muscle, all of these interesting things start to happen. So for example, we also help with type 2 diabetes. So how do we do that? Well, muscle density. Inside of the muscle cell, there's these things called myofibrils. And the more myofibrils that you have, those are insulin receptors. So you can handle sugar better. So people that come and use the Osteostrong system for 6 months consistently, this is a key thing. It's got to be consistent. Without changing their diet, we're able to drop their A1C by 0.6%.
That's crazy.
Which is unheard of, right? Because usually it's incredible amounts of workouts plus a regimented diet, and that stuff works totally. And you should totally do all of it together. Like you should, if you have type 2 diabetes, you should be doing all of these things. But it's just showing like the efficacy of what one modality can do for type 2 diabetes. So back to fibromyalgia. How does it help with fibromyalgia? Well, let's take a step back. What is fibromyalgia? Do you know?
Oh.
It is undiagnosed pain.
Okay.
Yeah, that's interesting. Like you go to the doctor and they're like, yeah, not sure. Fibromyalgia. Like
I thought it was something related to the nerves specifically, but
so they don't know.
I don't know.
So they don't know. You know what they prescribe for fibromyalgia?
Probably oxycodone or something.
Antidepressants.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Because funny enough, when you feel better, you have no pain. When you get sad, pain shows up. So what is this really a problem of? And my mom was on medication. She was on Cymbalta for over 16 years. And I wanted her off of the stuff because like this stuff is crazy. Once you get on this, the doctors recommend that you never get off.
Kind of like statins or something.
Yeah, well, statins you can kind of get off, but for this, I talked to her. We worked with her doctor. I'm like, hey, let's create a plan to wean her off over time, because this set of machines is supposed to help with this. So 6 months later, the doses just start to dwindle a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more, and then it's gone. So then 6 months later, she has completely stopped her cortisone shots for her chronic hip pain. And then at the same time, this mysterious fibromyalgia is disappeared. It's gone. How does this happen? One of the most interesting, and I don't have any scientific proof about what I'm about to say,
Sure.
but here's what I think happens. What I think happens is that when people use the Osteostrong system, because it's strengthening your entire musculoskeletal system, you start to feel better. There's a reason why people come to us with chronic back pain, chronic joint pain, chronic hip pain, and they start to feel better because things start to get stronger. Your bones start to get stronger, the tendons and ligaments, they start to thicken and get stronger. The connection points of those things into the bone become more solid. Mm-hmm. And you know that if you have any kind of pain, let's say you have a paper cut, tiny little paper cut, but anytime you touch it to something, there's a little bit of pain, and it prevents you from doing a little something.
Like cooking or something.
Like cooking or tying your shoe or anything. Imagine having that in all of your joints. Now, if you have this undiagnosed pain, what if when you started strengthening your bones, your tendons, your ligaments, your joints started to get stronger, more stable, that pain started to recede? And when the pain started to recede, now you feel better. And when you feel better, the fibromyalgia goes away, the symptoms go away. So what if you could feel better without taking an antidepressant?
Interesting.
That's kind of what I think is happening.
So let's talk about what the machines actually are, how they work, and all that stuff.
Yeah, so there's 4 different machines that target 4 different parts of your body. The whole thing is based on Wolff's Law. So Wolff's Law is a 100-year-old law that talks about your body will adapt to the environment around it. And why that's important to the machines is because in order for you to strengthen bone, we needed to compress the long bones and axially, end to end. And when you compress the bones, because bones are pliable, right? They're not meant to be as hard as a table. They're not meant to be like a glass rod that is hard but
brittle.
Right. So when you are able to compress these bones, so we have ones for your hip, we have ones for your spine, we have ones for your upper body. When you compress that, what's happening is that your brain, neurologically, you're like, hey, there is an event that is happening. And that event is going to cause more bone reformation to start happening, remodeling to start happening. So an easier example, there's a movie back in the day, like 80s movies.
Yep.
Jean-Claude Van Damme, kickboxer. Ever seen this movie? Okay, so there's this one scene where he's kicking a bamboo tree with his shin over and over and over and over and over until it's like bloody. So why is he doing that?
Bone conditioning and removing his nerves.
Yeah, it's bone conditioning. Every time you go through that pain, that bone becomes stronger in that area. And, it's something more people can understand is that when you're a kid, you break a bone, like if you break your arm and it grows back, does it grow back stronger or weaker?
I've heard both. Some people are like, if I break my bone again, I'm going to fully lose all functionality here. So
yeah. So typically it's stronger.
Yeah.
Right. And when you break it again, you typically don't break it in the same spot. Mm-hmm. But yes, there's definitely a fear.
there's some, especially if it's right near the edge of the bone, and people are like, oh.
Yeah, so that's what the machines do. So there's 4 of them, and then people come in once a week, and most folks that come to us, they come to us because they've gotten a diagnosis from their GP, and their general practitioner says, hey, you have osteoporosis. Here's some medication. So like that's kind of like the first line of defense of, hey, here's some medication. And there are more and more doctors now that are saying, okay, well, you can do medication or you can do a holistic route. And back in the day, that holistic route was just, hey, just go do weight-bearing exercises. And then now what we're doing, what my major focus is for not even just Austin, but just around the world, there's 170 Osteostrongs around the world at this point. I want to put in the minds of all the physicians that Osteostrong beats osteoporosis. I just want to link these 2 words, Osteostrong and osteoporosis. So anytime that they diagnose somebody with osteoporosis or osteopenia, pre-osteoporosis, I want them to think that there is a holistic route. Why? Why are doctors now listening to us that they didn't 5 years ago when I first opened? It's because I had zero credibility, because they were just like, okay, show me the studies, show me the studies, show me the studies. I'm like, I'm not a major pharmaceutical company. I can't do a study with 100,000 people. Like we just don't have that. Mm-hmm. And they're like, well, we'll see what happens after a couple of years. So we were able to find people that were more progressive, that are just like, I'll do anything except for the medication. So then they came and saw us. So we spent time with them, and we've been doing this for 5 years now. And I'm happy to say that we have tons of people that have pre and post bone density tests that show positive improvement. And it's not just a little positive improvement. The thing that's blowing the doctors away is that this improvement is like 10%, 14%, things that are unheard of in the world.
And over what time period?
So depending on the age, typically we see in the first year that they will stop all loss and maybe a little bit of improvement, maybe like 2-3% improvement. And then we see the major gains on like 2 years. And this is the 10, the 14, the 16. Like we're seeing stuff that the doctors have not seen before. So then we're just taking this back to the doctors and going, hey, doc, this is your patient. We didn't do the bone density test. This is from a third party. So what do you think? Have you ever seen any improvement like this before? And they're like, holy cow, no. I'm like, oh, maybe this is just a fluke. Maybe there's just something wrong with the DEXA scan machine. And I'm like, all right, fair enough. But when you do it over and over and over and over, and their balance is getting, there's a 200% improvement in their balance. Their grip strength, there's a massive improvement in their grip strength. The functional tests of just being able to get out of a chair, all of these things that we're constantly testing, these are markers that physicians understand. So not only do we show them the bone density test, but then we show them the functional markers of like, hey, look, this person can go outside and garden for 5 hours and not feel any pain and have the energy to do that. They were not able to do that before they came and saw us.
So talk about the balance a little bit, because I think that might confuse people based on what you said.
Yeah, so there's 3 things that we focus on at Osteostrong. There's 3 things that we're really, really good at. One is bone density, obviously. So bones, balance, and strength. So bone density, so we talked about the 4 machines. That's where you come in and you compress your machines, or you compress your bones on our machines. And that's what triggers the bone growth.
The machines don't move really at all.
No, so the machines don't move at all. You don't have to stack weights. Everything is computer controlled. You have a tablet that shows exactly how much force that you're creating. And it's kind of gamified in a way. So you get to see how much you've created this week. You get to see how much you created last week, what your personal best was over time. And
I think when I tell people what my personal best is, almost always people are like, what? No, it can't be true. I'm going to say the number, and I'm just like, everyone listening is going to go, nope, it's not true. I think it was 3,800 pounds on the lower GT.
Yep.
And I think you have seen this number, so you can corroborate that I might be off by 100 pounds either way, but that's approximately correct.
So the reason why people don't understand how you can create that amount of force is because people are thinking in terms of a squat or a leg press. They're like, how could you possibly move that much weight? You're not moving weight.
Anything.
You're creating force. And that force is at the very peak. And you're only hitting that number, that 3,800 number, for a fraction of a second.
Yeah.
You're not holding it
for
10 seconds.
Right.
You're not doing 3 sets of 10.
But I'm also not jerking. I'm not, it's not a kick,
right?
Let's say. I was talking with a couple of kind of power lifter guys a couple days ago. And I'm like, I'd be really curious to see what you guys, because these are big, strong dudes.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'd be really curious to see how you guys do it. And both of them are kind of like, I think I might actually try this. So we'll see. But they're like, yeah, but I can only squat like 600 pounds. I'm like, nowhere near that. I'm like, yeah, but that's measuring only the weakest part of your squat.
That's right.
The weakest part of your squat is able to get 600 pounds up. Imagine the strongest part of your squat where your strength is. And they're like, oh, actually, maybe I could do that then.
Yeah.
And that kind of got their minds going.
Yeah, there was a NASA researcher that came and saw us for, I think it was 6 months. So she came in every week from Houston, and she was like, okay, I'm going to chart all of my progress. And she was an Olympic lifter, and she's a researcher, so she's very meticulous on all of the records that she keeps. So she had records of like 2-3 years of all of her power lifts, her cleans, her squats, her deadlifts, all of these things. Mm-hmm. She comes to our center for the first time, and she's like, so what should I expect? What should I expect coming here? I'm like, well, after your first time, you're probably going to go back and you're probably going to be able to improve your lift by about 5%. She's like, whatever. Like, she's like, I've been charting this thing forever, and I never have gains like that. And I'm like, all right, we'll see what happens. All right. So she comes in, she does her thing. She uses all 4 machines, and then she goes back to Houston. She comes back next week, and she's like, Deepak, holy shit. But it may have just been a fluke. You may have planted a seed where I just did 5% more.
Sure.
And I'm like, okay, well, let's just keep going. Let's see what happens. So she does her next session. She goes back and she's like, Deepak, I increased it by another 3%. And this kept going on like week after week after week. And she was breaking her own records like almost every week. Mm-hmm. And this was amazing.
I believe it.
Yeah.
Although it seems like first week, because the first week's always kind of like, just do like 30%, 70% or whatever.
Yeah.
Like some don't go all the way. Don't hurt yourself week one. But I could certainly see it within the first month. Absolutely.
Yeah. And it wasn't just the number on the machine that was improving. It was how it translated to the actual weight on the Olympic lift.
Yeah.
That's where the gauge was. Like that's where the 3% and the 5% week over week were.
It's crazy.
Of course, on our machine, she was I think she hit 21 multiples of her body weight on the lower GT.
Wow.
Incredibly strong.
Yeah, no kidding.
But that's, I don't know how we got talking about that, but we're supposed to be talking about balance.
Yeah. So talking about balance.
But yeah, so 3 things that we're great at. So we just talked about the strength and we just talked about bone. Now the balance piece of this is, why do we care about balance? You know, if our core demographic are women, 45 to 72, for example, that's our core. Those are the folks that need us the most because they are at the most risk of breaking a hip. And that's the number one thing that we want to prevent. Well, yes, you can improve your bone density. That's one way to do that. You can also improve your strength. That's important too. Now, why do we need to improve your balance? It's because we don't want you to fall to begin with. Mm-hmm. So if we can prevent the fall, and then if you do fall, you will have the strength to decelerate on the way down. And then if you decelerate too fast, you have the bone density to not break. Mm-hmm. So that's why we are the experts at those 3 things. Like that's our core.
Yeah, I think it's extremely unlikely that somebody is going to break a leg after doing Osteostrong after a year or 2 years. Partly because they just don't fall. I think that's a big part of it. I think the balance, it's sort of an underrated, kind of a weird side thing. It's like almost, it's kind of like, oh yeah, we also do this, but I don't think it's actually as kind of throwaway as it might seem.
It's definitely not. I mean, we get stories all the time, like we had in just simple things like, hey, I was walking around the yard and I tripped over a hose and I didn't fall. And I'm like, yes, that's awesome. Yeah. And they're just like blown away to like, last year I would have fell flat on my face. But just them having that ability.
I awesome. Have not fallen once since I've started doing Osteostrong. Not once.
Were you falling before?
Not regularly, but occasionally, it'd slip down the stairs or something, just kind of little bumps and bruises here and there. And no crazy, not like real falls or whatever, but slips.
Yeah.
Nothing. Not even kind of like temporarily losing my balance with socks or anything. Nothing like that. It's just I think once you're attuned to what your inner ear knows as the correct plane, it almost doesn't matter what angle you're at. So you can be kind of coming in hot at a weird angle and you still know which way is up. You know what I mean? And that's kind of one of because a lot of the exercises are you close your eyes and you look in weird directions and you're in weird positions and stuff. So your inner ear gets really used to being in awkward positions and it's vibrating. So it's trying to get you off balance at, I think it works at 30 hertz or so, which is about the same rate as your muscles contract. So your muscles are contracting and it's trying to get you off balance at the same rate. It's really trying to throw you off. It's trying to buck you off the entire time.
Yeah. The whole point of the vibration plate that you're standing on when we do these balance exercises is really to put you on an unstable surface. Because if I can put you on an unstable surface and you can stand on one leg, close your eyes, and do a twist on an unstable surface, how are you going to feel on a stable surface? Mm-hmm. So this is probably one of the reasons why you feel supremely confident on concrete that's not shaking. Like,
well, no, but even I do some like trail hiking or whatever, and everyone else is like falling and sliding and whatever, and I'm just like, I'm like a mountain goat.
Yeah. Well, so one of the other thing that happens is that when you're on that vibration plate is that you are turning on all of these different stabilizer muscles that you don't normally use all day. Like most of us are just sitting, typing, and not using all these different muscles.
I mean, I'm behind a desk like 9 out of 10 hour work hours a day or whatever it ends up being. So, and the rest of the time I'm just like getting up to get a snack or something. I'm like very sedentary, and yet I am still probably one of the strongest people I know because of this. And we'll talk about the other thing in a second here. But I really think the balance is strangely highly useful in all kinds of weird little areas. And stabilization firing also upregulates testosterone, or human growth hormone, and I think also and also I think also testosterone as well. But it just makes it so you're more you can grow muscle faster, and it improves your tendons and all kinds of other stuff. So,
and one of the other big things that it helps reduce injury. Because you're turning all of these things on, and you're doing things at weird angles at our center that if you ever fall or slip at home, you've already been in somewhat of that position and you've already turned that muscle on. So you're less likely to pull that muscle because you've already turned it on.
Right. Yeah. Another weird side effect is I grew about a half an inch.
Yeah. That's typical.
It's kind of a strange... And when people ask me why, I'm like, something about my vertebrae? I know, ... not really sure.
Yeah, we had a member come in, and she was like, Deepak, I got to tell you something. I just came from the doctor. I'm like, oh man, where is this going? And she's like, I don't believe this, but she told me I grew an inch. And I'm like, holy shit, like, that's awesome. Because that's one of the things that she came in for because of posture issues.
Yeah.
And she's like, how did this happen? What are we doing here that's helping this thing? And I didn't even believe the nurse. So I said, the nurse, go get the doctor, have the doctor measure me. Because I don't trust you. Because there's no way I grew an inch. And she did. She was standing an inch taller.
Yeah.
And so one of the reasons is, one, your posture will get better because you're able to stand up straighter without pain. One of the reasons people have bad posture is because when they do stand up straight, chest out, shoulders back, it causes pain. When you remove that pain, then you can stand up taller. Second thing is that on one of our machines that is kind of compressing, and then you are self-decompressing on the spine, you have all of this natural hydration that comes in and starts hydrating the discs. So now you have this kind of natural elongation of the spine. And is that going to give everybody an inch? No. But if you have lost height over time, people are gaining their height back because of these two reasons.
So for those listening, if you've got ladies in your life, this is definitely something they should know about, even if they don't have it, because I see it more as prophylactic. That's why I do it. I don't have osteoporosis or osteopenia, but I also don't want to fall and die with like 1 out of 5 chance within a year or whatever crazy stat you just said. Like, that's just not a way I want to go. If I'm going to die, it's got to be, with gusto, not in a hospital bed. Jeez. So I recommend it to basically every woman I talk to, just that you at least let them know that it exists, get the education out.
Yeah. The big thing to add on to that is that doctors won't recommend a bone density test until they're in their 50s, which is ridiculous.
That's a long, really.
It's just too late.
Because you can get osteopenia quite a bit earlier.
100%. My wife had it, and when she was 43.
Wow.
And it just depends. It just depends on what impact level activities that you've been doing, throughout your life. So I would say at least ask your doctor to get a bone density test just to know where you are. And if you are already getting close to being at risk, you don't want to start addressing this when you're in full-blown osteoporosis.
Yeah, I've recommended it to all the ladies in my life, and I know a couple of them are using it.
Yep.
And so that's, as far as I can tell, that's about as good as a job as I can do, other than stuff like this and try to get the word out. But I would really love it if more people knew about this, and it grew to more locations, and just made it super, super convenient. So the way I found out about this was through Dr. Jaquish's book. I was actually
Which one?
The weightlifting is a waste of time, like in small type, and so is cardio. I know he was just doing that to bait a whole bunch of weightlifters and get them to buy the book. And
it worked.
Oh, it totally worked. But if you've seen Jaquish's before and after photos, like he is absolutely the real deal. Like that guy's a monster. He's just all, just about as muscle bound as a human being could possibly be without being a comic book caricature. You know what I mean? And so I knew that he was telling the truth about what he was saying, because here he is doing it, and he will show you how he's doing it. He's not like hiding it behind, 80 rounds of steroids or whatever.
Right.
And, you can do it with him. But in his book, he was talking, as you said, about his mom and, kind of how he went down this path of, starting to learn about, bone density. And I think he's actually on the osteoporosis board, or like I
think he used to be
American Osteoporosis Board or something. I forget what it was. So, it was kind of likened to being like the Tony Stark of
fitness,
of biomedicine or whatever, fitness. And the more I read his book, the more I'm like, there's a ton of very hard-earned wisdom in this book. And while I'm not prepared to go fully in the deep end on all metrics because there's a bunch of stuff in that book, like a lot, I still thought it was extremely interesting that this thing existed, the Osteostrong existed. And I'm like, I really want to try it. I just want to go in once and give it a try to know what it is, because it's one thing to see it like on website. It's one thing to talk about or see it, read about in a book, but it's very different to actually do it once in person
and experience it.
And the closest I can liken it, it kind of reminds me of like the lower GT anyway. It's kind of like if you kind of wedge yourself in like between two walls or something, it was like perfectly aligned, which walls would never be, but kind of perfectly aligned to your height, and you could push without the walls breaking. Because in my case, they were 100% break. And
it would go through walls.
100% would break. And I know this for a fact because this has happened once.
Oh, there's a story there.
My foot went right through the wall. But if the wall could withstand that kind of pressure, that's exactly what it's like. And I'm like, there's nowhere, you could go and you could do like weightlifting, and you could do your 1 rep max, which is a lot of people will think that's the same thing. But that's only 1 rep of the weakest part of the motion and not the strongest part. So what would happen if I was able to finally be in a place where I could push as hard as a human could possibly push at the hardest part of all the motions? And for me, I'm like, I have to try it. I've got to try it. I got to try it once. And so I went in and tried it, and very quickly realized I need to come back and do it again. So I think I've been doing it around 2 years now, maybe just shy. And I don't see quitting anytime in the near future. So,
and the really cool thing is that you are continuing to get stronger.
Yeah.
So people think that, hey, there's a plateau, and some people do hit a plateau for 6-7 months. I hit a plateau on, the upper GT for almost a year, and I just could not create any more force. And then I took a break for like a month, maybe 2 months, and I came back and I smashed it. And I was like, what is going on? Because there's also a mental game that you're playing, right?
Absolutely.
It's not all just physical. It's taught me a lot about just being resilient. And we talked about grit earlier. And it's like sometimes you have to do something over and over and over and over and see no production from it or no result from it because you haven't gotten a new personal best, and you're just not able to get it. If you just do it over and over and over and over and over and over, you will eventually get 1 level stronger. Yeah,
for me, I got up to 38-ish, whatever the number actually was, and then we moved the plate closer. So now I'm producing less force. I'm in a less optimal angle for the maximal amount of force, but I'm in a better position.
Yep.
And I'm like, I don't know that I'm going to ever get back to that number again. Like, I really don't think I'm going to get any. if I hit 3,000, I'll be impressed. Like this is hard. This is really, really, really hard. And now in that tighter position that I'm in now, I think I'm at just over 3,500. So I'm creeping up on my old numbers again.
Yeah. And once you get to 38, you're going to get to 4 because you're in your strongest range of motion when you're almost at full extension. So once you get to that point, you're going to trip 2 tons.
I think I will. In fact, this last time I went, I was at just over 3,500, and I'm like, I know I had just a little bit more in me, but I was a little bit worried because I hadn't seen that kind of stair step in a long time. I'm like, I better back it off just for myself, make sure I'm not injure myself in the process, and I'll, gradually go up to where I need to be. But I prefer the slow gains as opposed to these massive jumps. Of course, yeah. Personally.
So do we.
Yeah. Right. I just don't want to cause any injury, but it's been a fascinating ride, I will say. I've learned a lot about my body, which I'll get back to. Actually, I want to talk about some other stuff first. But
sure.
So let's talk about the franchise. Like, why did you decide to do, like, franchise is kind of a hard model, and sometimes like there's a lot of things that you're sort of bound by their marketing and whatever. Like, why a franchise?
I was young and dumb. No, with the franchise, it comes support, right? And I had never run a retail center before. I had no idea how to run this type of business at all. So having a franchise that has some system of support, some system of process, and some system of marketing that they're already doing was a huge benefit for somebody like me who doesn't have that experience. So if you don't have that type of experience, going into that type of model is a great way to start.
Mm-hmm. And in retrospect, would you recommend the franchise model to people?
I do. I still think it's a great model. You just have to have all of the systems and processes and all of the things properly executed.
So what don't they tell you that you had to learn the hard way? Because there's got to be a lot of crazy lessons learned in that.
Yeah, I mean, the number one thing is business is hard, right? If it were easy, everybody would be doing it. And the second thing is that I wanted to build this thing like super fast. I bought 3, and I wanted to keep opening the next one, and I was going to just move. And I'm like, okay, I'll hire a bunch of people, I'll train the team, we'll get up and running, and then I'll step out and I'll go do the next one. Mm-hmm. As in a franchise, you need to be the owner operator for like at least 9 months solid. That's the one thing that I tell every new franchisee. It's like, don't think that you're going to come in here and hire a manager a month later and then exit the business and this thing's going to run on its own and you're going to have this magical thing called passive income. No, it does not exist. You have to put in the time, the energy, the effort to build the culture, to build the process, to build the system. Even though that it's already documented on the franchise side, you still have to execute it. You need to make sure that your team is executing it as well as you.
You got to start with it. You got to get a team.
You have to build a team, right? And we've gone through a lot of folks, and there's a whole learning process in hiring people, right? And this. Mm-hmm. And fortunately, over the last 3 years, I've got an incredible team at this point. Like the folks, Heather and John, these guys have been the rocks, and everything that I teach them, they're absorbing. They want to learn more. They want more responsibility, and they're like the best. They're really, just as cliche as it sounds, extended family.
Yeah, they're great. Absolutely. All right, so let's talk about X3 a little bit, because this is another thing. So this is how I went down the rabbit hole originally. Some hacker somewhere was talking about X3, and he's like, I really want to try it, but I'm nervous. It seems like the craziest workout ever. And I'm like, is this another P90X, like people jumping up and down kind of thing? Like, what is this? So I went and did some research. And for those who've never heard of this thing, x3bar.com, I think, is the website, or at least that redirects where it's supposed to go, Jaquish Medical. But it's a Olympic bar that's maybe 2 feet longish, something like that. I think they have a longer one now as well, with these 2 hooks on it, and you slip these, basically, for lack of a better term, big rubber bands, like massive, super, super big rubber bands, but not the kinds you see in like little crappy gyms that break, you could easily just rip them apart kind of thing. These are
like surgical tubing is what people normally associate with elastic bands.
And definitely not that. These are super thick. I don't know what they're made of. Do you know?
Layered latex.
Latex, right. Which is a kind of a weird but very, very stretchy material, and it just keeps stretching forever. And the other thing that comes with it is a ground plate. And so I looked at some people who were doing this online and like trying to understand the workout. And he actually, Dr. Jaquish actually posted videos of him going through the entire thing. So backing up a little bit, I've been working out basically my entire life, doing different types of, weight training or whatever. And, came up in the days of Conan the Barbarian comic books, right? Just to get big, strong, right? And, but I was always sort of like stymied. I just could never get past this level. So I went and went to bodybuilding.com and I looked at Chris Gethin's website. He had this whole like, he'd train with me or whatever. And so it's supposed to be like a 10-week program. I did the whole thing, and then I kept going, and I kept going, and I kept going. I probably did it for half a year or so, even though it was supposed to be just 10 weeks. And, just eating, chicken and vegetables and nothing but that, and working out. And I'm not exaggerating here. I think it was 19 times a week. So 7 days, 2 times doing cardio, and then 5 days a week doing weight training. So you can do the math.
That's a ton of time.
Oh, tell me about it. Tell me about it. So I was working out at least 2 hours a day, and probably more like 3 to 4 hours a day on the heavy days. And I was not gaining an ounce. I was like, my body was changing, but I was not gaining any weight whatsoever. My body to fat ratio was definitely improving, but that's it. And then I started thinking, cardio just seems like it's killing me. Like the cardio is the problem here. That and the fact that I was not salting any food was giving me crazy bad headaches. So I'm like, okay, there's some problems with this idea. So I started salting my food, got rid of the headaches right away. That was great. And I stopped doing cardio, and immediately I jumped up about 20 pounds in muscle. And I'm like, oh, this is great. Like I'm actually getting strong, the way.
Just from stopping cardio.
So immediately jumped up 20 pounds.
Yep.
And I'm like, this is great. I can go harder now. My weight training, I can go way, way harder. And then I got an injury, and it knocked me out for, I don't know, probably 6 months to a year, like a long time. Wow. I couldn't even lift my cat. Like my shoulder was just absolutely destroyed. And I finally was able to, I went through physical therapy and the whole thing. And like, I was finally able to get range of motion back, and then finally some strength back. And I went back and I started training again. I didn't learn my lesson. I just started doing the same thing over again. And I got, I was strong, not as strong as I was, but strong, getting stronger.
Sure.
And, again, just felt like I wasn't doing the thing. So then I came across this, X3, and the thing that got me about it is like, imagine you have, instead of a static weight, you have this rubber band going around your back and you're pushing. But imagine a static weight. Let's say I can only lift 100 pounds off my chest, and that's a pound more, and I just couldn't do it. But out here, my full range of motion, when I'm pushing out here, 100 pounds is really light. It's very easy by comparison. I could probably push 500 pounds, 600 pounds out here. But since I can't get it off my chest, I'm never going to be able to push 600 pounds. And so you're always sort of on the bulk of the range of motion, you're doing way less than you should be doing. But with these incredibly thick bands, you can actually get a power curve that matches your strength as you're going out. I'm like, okay, that makes a ton of sense to me. And I like the fact that it's much less prone to injury, slippage, and there's all these other things that I just don't have to worry about. It's also very portable, so I can just throw it in a backpack and take it with me somewhere. And there's all these things I like about it. So I tried it. I got it, bought it. It's like $600 or something. I got it. And the first day I tried it, I had to sit down immediately after the first set. I'm like, I have never felt this burnt out after one set in my life. Like, I'm like, I'm not sure I'm going to be able to do the rest of these sets. Like, whoa, that was so different than what I was used to. So I powered through it, did the whole thing. And I'm like, okay, that was interesting. That was day one. I'm like, okay, I'm going to do day two and see how I feel. Right. Because that was a lot. Right. So I do day two, and, on the third day, I think you're supposed to take a day off after the first 2 days or something. When you're very first starting, it's
when you're beginning.
It's very different when you're very first starting. So I took it with us. We were actually going on a vacation, so it was my first opportunity to take it with. I packed it in my backpack and we took it off. And my girlfriend at the time, fiance now, we were in this camping trip, and I'm like, I'm going to try this thing again. So I tried it the second time. It was way easier the second time, much more manageable. Like, my muscles had already adapted. And I could already tell my physique had changed slightly in just 3 days or whatever since I started. And it progressively got more and more and more. And to the point where I was very strong by comparison to where I was when I was doing those crazy workouts that I got those injuries. Sure. Very strong. And, but then I hit this kind of weird plateau. And then I started doing Osteostrong, and I kind of didn't think anything of it. I'm like, I hit this plateau. This is where I'm at. I'm just always going to use the black bands. That's just where I'm at. So I'm never going to get stronger than this. I can tell when I try to use the elite band, I bought it thinking I might be able to do it. Just could not do it. I could get like half a rep out. I just couldn't quite get there. I started doing Osteostrong. Within a month, it unlocked something. It's like, it's the way I can describe it. It's sort of like my mind had decided I wasn't going to be able to do this elite band. It's like my muscles were strong enough. My bones might be strong enough, but it's probably my tendons and my brain saying, you're not strong enough to do this. Like, your tendons will get injured. You shouldn't do it. And it was basically
neural inhibition.
Yeah, it was neural inhibition. It was basically turning off my muscles, just saying you're not allowed to go this hard. And I really wasn't meaningfully stronger between those two times. But I do think my tendons and ligaments were way stronger, like not just a little stronger, like way stronger. And all of a sudden it just unlocked it. And suddenly elite band was, I wouldn't call it easy. It's not the word I would use, but it suddenly became accessible to me. I was finally able to get to this next much higher level, because that's double the weight. I mean, that's not a small jump. That's an enormous jump. Yeah.
For people to just kind of visualize what Robert's talking about, the black band, you know, at his height is probably maybe 400 pounds at full extension. Like,
is it that high?
I think it's close to that.
I thought it was 200.
No, I think it's more.
Oh, well, maybe not double then.
And then I think the elite band is closer to like 600.
Yeah.
So it may be like 350, then jump to like 600 for the elite band.
Right.
And the elite band is like, I mean, you could sit 3 people on and turn it into a swing.
Yeah.
Like, that's how thick this thing is.
Yeah. I mean, I liken to it's more akin to a tire than it is what you're thinking of a rubber band. It's very, very, very thick. So first of all, what's your feedback on that? Like, that unlocking that next level of strength, is that something you'd expect, or?
Yeah, we use it both directions, actually. So when we have women that are coming in and men that are doing their Osteostrong sessions and they hit a plateau, like if they're hitting a plateau on the LGT or the upper GT, then we're like, hey, let's introduce you to X3, because they both kind of govern each other. So when you're starting with Osteostrong, you're building, you know, this muscle density, but then the size of the muscle cell doesn't change, right? But what can you do to improve the size of the muscle cell? There is X3. So once people start doing X3 and they start building a bigger muscle cell, and then they come back to the Osteostrong machine, they start breaking records again.
And you think is that a muscular thing, or is that Is that more the ligaments?
I think that direction is a muscular thing, right? Because you just need a bigger muscle cell. You just need more energy to be able to create more power. Going from muscular to and using Osteostrong to break through, I think that's a muscle density thing is what happens. So when you're using the Osteostrong machines, you're improving your muscle density. You're not doing anything to the muscle size. X3 is doing the size, but Osteostrong is doing the density. So now you have more myofibrils inside of that muscle, which allows you to create more power.
Interesting.
So it goes both directions.
Yeah, that's very interesting. So when I have other people try it for the first time, I always start them off on like these little baby bands, just little tiny bands. We have a bunch of them kind of lying around from, different experiments and stuff.
Yeah.
And watching them, the first couple, maybe first 10 reps, they're like, this is so easy. And they're just like, no problem, because these little baby bands, right?
Yep.
They're super easy. And then they get to like 20, and they're like, and you can see their faces starting to get flushed. And I'm like, so I want you to stop at 40. And they're like, huh? You could see in their mind, like double what I just did. Then they get to 30 and, they're now beet red and suffering. And now every rep is really labored and they're really having to work for it.
Yeah.
And these, again, these little baby bands, these are like about as thick as a pencil, maybe double that. And, they make it to 40. They always make it to 40 because it's sort of like a matter of pride, I think. And then they're done and they're ready to throw up. They're like, I'm like, okay, so that's one of this is one of the sets, and then you do the next one, and I kind of show them next one, and very, very unlikely that they'll opt into the next one. They're like, okay, I now see what I'm up against, and then they'll ask to see me do one, and then I'll pick out the black band, or depending on what exercise we're talking about, maybe elite, and I'll do the same kind of exercise or whatever, and they're like, I don't think I could ever do that. Well, probably not unless you do it consistently. You have to do it regularly.
That's right.
But I think there's a culture about, it's kind of a weird subculture, but called like band chasing, go try to get to the next level. But
sure.
But for me, it was never really about that. I'm kind of always kind of curious how strong I can get. Like what does that mean? Especially again, because I spend 9 hours on my ass all day, it's not like I'm out there. I'm not like an Olympic athlete.
Sure.
It's not like I'm.
But you do want to be the strongest you possibly can be, because that only just benefits everything else. The level of energy you have, your immune system, all of the things benefit from you pushing your body.
Mm-hmm. I think that's got to be true. And so back to your point about the three things working in combination. So this is where I think it all kind of like gets kind of locked in. So if I'm about to get into a fall, the balance stuff, I can detect that I'm about to get into a fall much quicker and correct for it. Like, whoa.
That's right.
My feet, get my feet underneath me.
That's right.
Whatever. But then I'm in a fall, and a couple of the exercises like split squats, for instance, are great because you can basically catch your entire body. These are weighted squats with a band going underneath your foot. Mm-hmm. You can catch yourself mid-fall with just one leg. I mean, you're strong enough to like really grab yourself, which is great. So you're not going to hit the ground, so no risk of injury there. I mean, you might tear a groin muscle or something, but you're not going to hit the ground fully and knock out your hips or something. But even if you do with Osteostrong, you actually hit the ground, your bones are not going to break. So it's that combination of those three things.
They're less likely to break.
Yeah,
for sure.
Far less likely though.
Yeah, right.
And so the combination of the things, well, I don't get into falls. And if I do get in the falls, I stop myself. And if I fall, if I actually hit the ground, I don't get injured.
That's right.
I think I would be really curious if we could actually run a study like this to see what the longevity of people who do and don't use osteoporosis is. Because it's got to add years to people's lives.
It has to. Yeah, 100%.
Like many years potentially.
Yeah. And it's not just quantity. Right. It's quality.
Yeah.
The quality of life completely shifts. Like we're talking about the folks that, can walk normally. They've been diagnosed with osteoporosis. They can walk and drive and do things normally. But then we also have folks that come in on a walker. And a year later, they're walking out on their own free will.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Hanging up the cane, hanging up the walker. Don't need it anymore. Like, imagine what the quality of life.
Is that a muscle? Is that a leg muscle strength thing? Is that, why were they wearing
It's an everything thing, right? So when people first come in, number one, God, I can't remember this. This lady comes in with her assistant who drove her there, and she comes in her walker, and I'm like, "Who put you on this walker?" And they're like, "Oh, the nurses at this clinic or whatever it was," and I'm like, "You realize you're hunched over like big time, like almost like super curved, just so she can reach the bars," and I'm like, "Can we try something?" And she's like, "Yeah, sure." So I raised the bar like 5 inches. So now she's standing up on this. And I'm like, "Hey, I just want to make sure that you're still stable. Like, walk around and make sure that you're still stable." And she's like, "Yeah, actually, this feels good." And I'm like, it just blows my mind that people are let out of these clinics and put into a position where their posture is only going to get worse.
Yeah, no kidding.
And all of the pain that is going to happen.
It's frustrating.
Yeah, it's super frustrating, but it's also rewarding because I get to help them. Right. So then this person comes in, and then we slowly start to stand her up more and more and more. And as you know, we're improving her balance every time she's coming in. And she's like, "You know what? I don't think I need my walker." And we're just like, "Hey, let's go. We'll be right here. And we'll walk with you." And she's just walking around the center, and she's like, "Yeah, I feel pretty good." I'm just like, this is so awesome. Like, this is
amazing.
This is one of the biggest reasons why I got into Osteostrong to begin with, right? Is that I got tired of tech. I burnt the boats. I'm like, I'm out. I hung up tech. I just shut it off. I'm going to go into Osteostrong. I'm going to go into wellness because it's filling that contribution gap. And when I see people change their lives by being able to do something that they haven't been able to do, things that we take for granted, just walking across the floor without assistance, it is the most amazing thing ever. Like, for me, like from a fulfillment standpoint, it's awesome. I love it. I love that part. It's the best.
So, just a quick funny anecdote. So when I was using the Elite Band, I was fairly new to it at the time. You had 2 employees working for you at a time. They don't work there anymore. And they're like, "So you use the Elite Band, right?" And I could tell there was something up. Like they were doing something. I'm like, yeah. And so the other guy goes over to his table and he pulls out the Elite Band. He's like, "This Elite Band?" Like trying to like pull one over on me, like, "Aha, like you're not using this one." I'm like, "Yeah, that's the one." And they both looked at each other and they looked at me and they're like, "No, you don't, there's no way you use this thing." I'm like, yeah. And they're like, we got to see you do this. So I'm like, "Okay, no problem." So I started doing it, and I got up to like 10 reps or so. They're like, okay, stop. Like, and I could hear that. I'm like, okay. And I was doing something else, like talking to somebody else, and I could hear them kind of behind me. And one of them said, he was going to keep going. He could keep going. Yeah. And I don't think they'd ever actually seen it happen before. Like, it's just like this myth that this can be done. But it's like, had they focused on what with the tools right in front of them, they would have been just as strong as I was.
100%.
I thought that was interesting and strange. Like, come on, guys, you're right there.
Well, you got to think that, some folks are coming from a traditional training background where you have to do 3 sets of 10 of everything to be effective. And for people to see that if they do Osteostrong consistently, as well as doing X3 consistently, the amount of power and energy you can generate there's a reason why the Miami Heat is using X3. There's a reason why all of these professional athletes are using
some
X3.
Formula One drivers are starting to use it too.
Yeah. It's because it's incredibly effective.
to your point about the 3 sets of 10, my entire workout is like 20 minutes.
Yeah.
The rest of the time I am not working out. I used to work out 3 to 5 hours, depending on the day, at the worst 5 hours a day, but definitely 3 hours was regularly.
Yeah. Yeah.
When I was weight training, sometimes on the weekends, maybe as much as 5 to 6 hours. Like I was working out like crazy. I am way stronger than I was back then. I've never been stronger than I am right this second. In fact, I went back to jiu-jitsu after 25 years of hiatus, and I was very nervous.
Oh, wow.
I was very nervous because a lot of these guys, they're literally half my age.
Sure.
And they're monsters. These are like Green Berets and, Navy SEALs and just these, firemen, these massive dudes, like really all just burly and ripped. And I'm going in and I have not even thought about rolling really at all in 25 years, not exaggerating.
Yeah.
And I went in there and I'm wrestling, rolling with brown belts and, purple belts and whatever. And definitely above where I'm at by quite a margin.
Yeah.
I did not feel for 1 second that I was physically outmatched. Not 1 second. There was not a single. My cardio was not as good as theirs, which makes sense since I do none of it.
And we're sitting 9 to 10 hours a day.
But my physical strength was easily this on par or stronger than the guys who were in there religiously and very high belts. And this is a good school. This is not some belt factory or something.
Yeah.
And so I feel like that's a huge testament. If I can 20 minutes a day and really have a very sedentary lifestyle for the most part, the rest of my time, get the kinds of benefits that I need out of it, like why wouldn't you do it? Like, and the thing is, this has been such a hard sell for me. I've probably recommended X3 to, I don't know, probably 50 people over the years. And I know exactly, other than our family, exactly one other person who started using it. And I'm like, I just don't get it. Why is this not something you've just decided, okay, I'm going to go do it immediately?
It's a mindset. It's that can't possibly work, or that can't possibly work for me, or it's not worth the $600. You can use code Austin, save $50. But you will come up with any type of excuse to stop yourself from doing something. And it's like God, what did I just hear the other day? It was, you have to understand your short-term gains versus your long-term gains to really make the best decision for you. And so many of us, and I'm guilty of this sometimes too, like we'll take the short path, but we know it's not good for us long-term. But what people don't understand about, something like X3 and Osteostrong is that it's easy to be consistent. Anybody can start a gym membership at the beginning of the year and go 3, 4, 5 times a week for the first 3 weeks. How many of those people are doing 5 times a week for the entire year? Mm-hmm. That's the trick. How do you stay consistent? And because the workout is, it's literally probably 8 minutes of actual work.
Yeah.
For a workout, and the rest of it is this kind of time.
At worst, that's the worst it would ever
worst
be.
Case. Yeah,
that's worst case.
And that's you crushing it.
Yeah.
And I was just telling some folks the other day, I was like, look, I'm doing biceps, right? And this is 4 minutes of bicep curls.
How old are you?
I'm 48.
Right.
So that's 4 minutes of biceps a week. 4 minutes a week.
Yeah.
What can somebody do that's 20, 25, 30?
Yeah.
I'm almost 50 years old.
Yeah.
But this is beautiful for me because of all the reasons you talked about earlier. I can throw it in a backpack. I can travel with it. It only takes me 15 minutes. I don't get injured. Mm-hmm. And that's another big one. The injury piece, because when you're in your weakest range of motion, that's where most of the injury happens, and there's virtually no weight there.
And that's what happened for me with my shoulder.
There you go.
I was trying to lift, I'm not exaggerating, 325 pounds, and it's pop. Yeah.
But I mean, like to your question earlier, why aren't people doing it? It's the same reason why people get overweight. It's not because there's a secret to not getting overweight.
That's right.
It's just something else going on.
Yeah, I'm a big fan. And about the price point, for me, I've owned tons of gym equipment in my life. I actually had an entire room. I had a Smith machine and all kinds of crap. And all of that stuff cost way more.
And you could fill a full garage.
Yeah, you can. And I got a worse workout and I got injured. So I don't know why I would ever switch back. I can't come up with a reason to switch back. The only thing I can think of is maybe, try to find other ways to incorporate bands and other types of workouts. But that's just like incrementally slightly better,
I'll tell you, I went to the Goonies house in Astoria the other day, and my buddy
explain that, because that's a funny story.
So I'll get back then. Just one sec. So I'm visiting my buddy, and my buddy's like, "Hey, I want to go to the gym." And I was only there for like 2 days, so I didn't bring the X3. I'm like, I don't really want to go to the gym. I have no reason. Like, I will never. My whole thing was that I don't need to touch another conventional weight ever in my life. And he's like, "Oh, just come keep me company." And I'm like, "All right, cool." So we go to the gym, and he's like, "Hey, just do this exercise with me." And it was like this incline press on like a Smith machine. And I'm like, "All right, fine. I'll just do it. Just keep you company." And it was the most painful thing I have felt, and I don't know how long. Like, the DOMs after that workout lasted almost a week and a half. And one of the things that people don't really understand about X3 is that when you have that soreness, that's actually not a good thing.
Right. It's tearing your ligaments.
It's tearing the muscle. Like people, like we've had this kind of mindset of over the last 50, 60 years of, oh, you need to tear the muscle so the muscle can repair. Well, now we know there's better science. The better science says, no, you just need to fatigue the muscle cell completely so then it can grow back and it'll get bigger.
Well, and keep it under tension. That was another big finding.
Yeah.
If you can keep it under tension for at least 1 full minute, and preferably a little bit longer than that, as opposed to a lot of the weights that you'll rest them on your chest or whatever, or when you're doing a bicep curl, you'll rest at the top. People don't think of that as a rest, but it is a rest.
Correct.
So you're not under tension in that part of the range of motion. So if you can keep it under tension the entire time, it has dramatically improved the uptake of human growth hormone and all that other stuff.
Yeah, that's right.
So, I'm huge fan. I try to get people to use it all the time.
So after that workout, I was like, look, dude, I'm not going back. So if I go back, I'm bringing the X3.
That's right. So tell about your friend.
Yeah. So my buddy Bayman, he decides one morning, he couldn't tell me about this thing. So I'm sorry. So I wake up one morning and I'm getting ready. I'm going to start the day. And I look at my Twitter feed. And my Twitter feed shows, hey, this guy bought the Goonies house and bought Mikey's house in the movie The Goonies. And I was like, oh, cool. Like, I'm a massive Goonies fan, hence that's why I'm wearing the shirt. Yep. Goonies never say die. And I was like, holy shit, this is super cool. And so I just keep reading the article, and it's like, yeah, Bayman Zachary bought this thing. And I was like, what the fuck? Like, what is going on? And like, so I talked to him like 10 seconds later, and he's like, dude, I couldn't tell you. Like, we were under contract and we do all these things. And I was like, this is the most amazing thing. I'm going to help you fucking rebuild this whole thing. Like, it's going to be awesome. So next thing you know, I'm in Astoria, Oregon, flying across the country. And I walk up to Mikey's house. And I walk up to Mikey's house, and this is such a part of like my childhood. This is like such a part of like my mindset of I just want to be part of this adventure. So I go to the house, and then like I step inside the house, and I'm just like flooded with all of these like memories of just every part where every character was in the movie, and we're just kind of walking around, He's giving me the tour of the house. We go up to the attic, and it's just, my mind is just like, oh my God, this is the most amazing thing. And I get to stay here. Like, this freaking, it was so awesome.
Was Josh Brolin lifting weights up there?
Yeah. So, it's funny because like in the beginning, I was like, hey, look, I'm going to help you rebuild this house to what it was in the movie. So I watched the first 20 minutes of the movie, and I kept pausing it every 3 seconds. I cataloged everything in that house. Like, I wrote it down in a spreadsheet. And then we went to, the Goonies fan club, and I was like, hey, look, you want to be immortalized in the Goonies house? We need people to donate these items. We need to get everything that was there on that spreadsheet into the house. So people were sending stuff from like Italy, from like Australia, and I'm like organizing this whole thing. And yes, Josh Brolin's little chest expander thing, we have like 3 of those things now. We got the statue of David and this guy, he built this whole thing, and like the penis was detachable, it had a magnet on it so you could flip it upside down, like the whole thing.
That's really funny.
Yeah, it was just it was being able to be in like your childhood, your favorite movie of all time. Like, that's what this is for me. It was just such a gift, and I'm like, I'm so grateful that Bayman bought this, because his whole thing was like, I just want to keep the Goonies thing alive, the Goonies culture alive. And he's the perfect person on the planet to buy this.
That's great.
So he is now forever the head Goonie.
Yeah. Wow. Well, he deserves it.
Yeah. It's been a wild ride, and there's some pretty big things coming. So next time we chat, we'll talk about it.
All right. Cool. I love the Goonies. All right. So I'm kind of curious, back to the health stuff, how you feel about cold plunge.
So I think cold plunge has its benefits, and I think the number one benefit is that you are able to train your mind to do something that you really don't want to do. So the actual health benefits of going into the cold water and then coming out of it, it's not clear what it is. But what is clear is that if you can control your mind to do things that you don't want to do, are you going to be able to get more things done? I think the answer to that is yes, like resounding yes, because now things just become a little bit smaller. Like, I just scaled that wall, which is climbing into 36-degree water, which I know is going to feel like complete shit. Like, that is going to be really painful. But after you do it, you're like, okay, well, if I just need to do a couple of emails and, put out some new stuff, that's pretty easy compared to climbing into that thing.
That's right. Yeah, it kind of reminds me of the that parable. I think it's a sales thing about eating the toad in the morning, because if you eat a toad in the morning,
frog,
eat the frog in the morning. Because if you eat the frog in the morning, your rest of your days can't be possibly worse than having eaten the frog in the morning.
That's right. Yeah.
I've been doing it semi-frequently for the last couple of months, and mostly because I think the testosterone uptake, increasing your amount of testosterone, blood serum testosterone, I think is probably the major reason I would do it. But I definitely think it's kicked up my metabolism.
How often are you doing it?
Every day.
Every day?
Yeah.
In the morning? First thing?
In the morning, not necessarily very first thing, but within the first half hour. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And definitely before I work out, because I'm not trying to reduce inflammation from the workout. I want to have that inflammation stay high to basically stretch out the fascia around the muscle.
Inflammation is good.
Yeah. In that context, yes.
Yep.
But I'm kind of curious if you've thought about doing any studies or heard any studies around the use of X3 and cold plunge, or if you think those things are kind of totally separate. Or
I think it's just one of those additional modalities that if you have access to it and you have the ability to do it every day, that it's only going to benefit you, right? It's like if you can do cold plunge or red light or leg compression, like any of those additional modalities, I think is going to support your health. So I think all of them don't necessarily need to stack on each other to be wicked helpful. I just think that the more that you do, the better you're going to be off.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's talk about diet, because that's the other half of it, right? Diet and exercise, right? Those are the two. So first of all, do you have any opinions on what a perfect diet would look like if you were to try to tell somebody, here's what you should be doing?
I don't think there is a perfect diet for every single person. I think there's a lot of like legacy thinking and legacy mindset in the nutrition world. So everything is a controversy, whether you're vegan, whether you're vegetarian, whether you're on the standard American diet, the SAD diet, or whether you're keto or whether you're carnivore. I think there is something for everyone. But there are some baselines. And I think the baselines are if you just remove a few things like sugar, like processed food, like limiting your carbs, no matter what other of those diets that you are, or what the way of eating that you are participating in, if you just remove those three things, you will be better off than 90% of the population. So I think that's where everyone should start.
Yeah, my doctor put me on a low carb diet, which I was not super thrilled about because I love my carbs. And,
me too.
Within about 3 months, I'd lost about 20 pounds. I do not feel weaker. So my muscles maintained their strength. If anything, I got stronger. Since that point, I've probably lost another 10 pounds. So I'm down around 30 pounds. And again, stronger than I've probably ever been in my entire life today than
Awesome.
So
what is your diet currently?
It's basically just low carb and carnivore-ish. So I primarily eat meats, but I also augment it with some vegetables. And
Sure.
And I probably have between 40 and I would say maximum 100 carbs a day, but usually more like 60 carbs or less. So 40 to 60 carbs, which is kind of a weird, hard number to hit. That's kind of a sweet spot that's a little difficult to get to. But even on my quote unquote cheat days or whatever, I'm just at like 100, let's say. I really never go above that.
Yeah.
So, just normal kind of vitamins and, lots of water.
Have you tried going full carnivore?
Temporarily.
What's temporarily?
Just a handful of days in a row, not for long term.
Yeah. Usually you got to give it like 3 weeks.
Yeah.
To make the switch.
My stomach didn't like it. It revolted, which is apparently a very common thing to have happen.
Yeah. Well, what were you eating?
It's just steak and chicken, I think.
So chicken doesn't work if you don't have enough fat, because chicken's very, very lean. Mm-hmm. So if you were to ever give this a shot again, I would just try getting a bank of ribeyes, toss them in the freezer, and just do like 2 ribeyes a day.
I think that might work, but I also think my stomach was revolting for another reason, which is that the flora in my stomach was used to carbs and suddenly didn't have any. And so it's just like absolutely dying off. And that sort of turned my insides inside out. And so I'm sure you can imagine.
That's common.
That's very common. I've heard that before.
The purge.
Yeah, the purge. And then the other thing I was not particularly fond of is going to ketosis. So the very, very low carb diet is not for me personally, but I think a low carb diet of a handful of carbs a day, and really I'm just
What was happening?
Extremely bad breath. So the ketoacidosis was not something I enjoyed, nor did my significant other. So
I've never heard of that before. Is that a thing?
Oh yeah. Oh,
really?
Yeah, ketoacidosis.
Is that just in the beginning when you're converting from an old diet to a new?
I'm not entirely sure if it continues on or if it comes on and off. But it definitely, I had about 3 or 4 days of it, and I'm like, that's plenty. That is plenty for me. 3 or 4 bad. It's basically tastes like you have acetone in your mouth, and
yeah,
it's not a wonderful experience. So for me, that wasn't the right diet, given my need to be social and, talk to people in person, and, warding them off with my breath was not an option.
Wait, do I have bad breath?
Not from here. Talk all you want. But that definitely is a real thing, though. That definitely happens. So
yeah, I've been paying attention to health and fitness and just being generally just athletic, my entire life. I first started really looking into kind of the biohacking world when Dave Asprey put out Bulletproof Coffee. Mm-hmm. And that was my first foray into, some version of fasting, right? So it's like fasting from sugar. And I've been on and off doing that for almost 7 years. Mm-hmm. So I'll have like this morning I had 2 tablespoons of butter in my coffee, and that was breakfast. Mm-hmm. I have to do that now because I can't eat enough steak.
Yeah, it's a fat though.
To get the fat.
Right.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I need more and more fat. And when I don't have enough fat, then I'll have to eat some carbs. Otherwise, I'll start to get lightheaded.
Yeah. What about like cheese and that kind of stuff?
Yeah, cheese and stuff is fine for me because like I'm not lactose intolerant, so that doesn't bother me at all. But typically, if I have a couple of tortillas or, my kryptonite is chips and queso, like God, I love chips and queso. It's my favorite. But I train, right? So the way that I look at it is like during the week when I'm eating the steaks every day, like when I am on, I'm eating probably 2 ribeyes a day. And when I'm very, very disciplined, when I travel, it's really difficult. But when I'm on, it's like 2 ribeyes a day. And then on the weekend, if we decide to go to a Mexican restaurant, I'll eat chips. Like, I don't care.
Yeah,
it doesn't bother me.
As long as you don't eat too many, you're fine.
No, like it's even like, I'll order a pizza and I'll crush an entire pepperoni pizza by myself. Like a large pepperoni pizza.
Okay.
I'll feel like shit the next day.
Sure.
But tastes delicious. I love it.
Yeah.
But my body will bounce right back because the majority of the time I'm taking care of my body, right? I'm exercising regularly. I'm doing all of the things. So every once in a while, you can treat yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes it happens by accident. Like you're just not thinking about it. Like, oh, that's a very carby thing. Like I was at a meeting a while back and they had like those little bowls of popcorn kind of like out on these little tables, kind of as people were socializing. And I just didn't even think about it. I'm just eating all this popcorn. And then like, I'm like powered through about half of the bowl and I'm like, oh my God, I bet that had tons of carbs in it. Whoops. But you're talking to somebody. So it wasn't like I was paying attention to what I was doing. So it does happen, but by virtue of taking care of myself most of the time, I think you're right. I think it's my body just like, it's okay. We'll deal with these carbs now, but it gets used to not having them.
Yeah, if you want to have a bowl of ice cream, go have a bowl of ice cream.
Yeah.
But go work out afterwards. Go move. Don't just sit on the couch and Netflix for the next 3 hours.
Mm-hmm. Do your 8 minutes of X3.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there is this study, National Heart, Lung, and Blood Institute, LBI, that's kind of a mouthful, and the National Institutes of Health, NIH, funded a Tufts program called the Food Compass food scoring system. And they rated mini wheats and Honey Nut Cheerios at 87 and 76 collectively, and ground beef at 26.
Oh, I saw this.
Extremely low. So I was kind of curious, like how you feel about how sort of the mainstream media and the sort of the scientific consensus, if there's such a thing, how they're sort of treating health. And I mean, I think this is a pretty good example, but I know there's tons of other examples of food pyramid and so on. Like, how bad is the government at dealing with health for the nation?
Well, just take a look at the nation today and like, what's the average? The average is people are overweight, right? Like how many people have type 2 diabetes, which is a curable thing. It's not a lifelong sentence. And what is the recipe to cure things like type 2 diabetes? It's not a secret. It's very simple. Reduce your sugar. And when they put out studies like this, it has to make you think. Like the first question that goes through my mind is, okay, where's the money coming from? Follow the money. And we've all heard of like big pharma, but there's also like big food. Mm-hmm. And we know this, right? So we know that the food pyramid back in the 80s is bullshit. It's terrible. Mm-hmm. Cereal? it's just sugar,
right,
and carbs. It's the worst.
Yeah, I don't think people necessarily all know this, but on the glycemic index, bread and cereals are worse than sugar somehow. It's like you could eat sugar and you'd be better off than you would, like refined white sugar. You'd be better off than if you eat a slice of bread. It's actually higher on the glycemic index.
Yeah, I'm not sure why that is, but for fruit it makes sense.
Simple
because,
carbs.
Yeah,
it's even a more simple carb.
Like if you have something that has like a fiber component to it, then there's a little bit of an offset. But yeah, it's when things are coming from the government, things are coming from mainstream media, you always have to put your thinking hat on and be like, okay, why are they saying this? Is this true? And if you just think logically, and you know that sugar is probably the worst substance on the planet, next to cocaine may be number 2, but sugar is widely accessible,
kills more people,
and it's part of culture,
and it kills more people.
Yeah. So what should we be focusing on as a country? Should we be focusing on putting out a study that says Frosted Mini Wheats and Honey Nut Cheerios are better than natural ground beef? It's ridiculous.
So in their defense, they didn't say this, but it was actually a meta study on top of their study that said, or on top of their program that basically said, this is the result of your crazy algorithm.
Yeah. So
they didn't actually come out and say that, but that's the indefensible bullshit that comes out of there's this new paradigm of the way of thinking about food. Like they're so backwards, they can't come up with a model that just looks at the glycemic index. Like just look at that. Well, if you just look at that, you're probably like 95% better off than all these other crazy food pyramid designs or whatever they're coming up with.
Yeah, I agree. You don't have to think too far past just that one metric. Mm-hmm. But if they did a meta-analysis, which means that they looked at multiple studies, combined the data, and then drew some conclusions. Mm-hmm. If you just looked at the individual studies on Frosted Mini Wheats or on the Honey Nut Cheerios, who funded that study?
Mm-hmm. Kellogg.
I mean, you just got to follow the money. And when you look at like large scale
or
studies,
whomever owns
or
those
whoever,
properties,
whoever it is, it takes a lot of money and capital and time and resources to put together studies like this. So who stands the most to gain from that study, from all of the individual studies?
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right. As soon as I saw it, I'm like, wow, this really stinks. Like people who grow wheat and the industry around that and who want people to consume more wheat, grains, with their very high glycemic index. It's almost certainly who funded it originally.
For sure.
Through the NIH and kind of trickled down to Tufts, and they're all sort of in bed with one another. And, you know, I used to believe that these conspiracy theories were just that. They just can't be true. I'm like, no, because it's so difficult to organize this kind of corruption. But this is the kind of corruption that's been around for so long. It's just existed from almost the very beginning. It's a cottage industry of corruption. It's just been there. And it's just hard for people who aren't in it to see it. And even people who are in it, they're just part of the cog of the wheel. They're not even the main thing going on. They're just sort of like, oh, I'm just a Tufts researcher, and my grants come from this group, and this is what they want us to study. And They want us to study this very specific thing that they wrote for me to go study, you know? And
Yeah.
you don't know what you're doing is potentially going to kill millions of people.
Well, there was studies being done in Bastrop, I think. No, not Bastrop. Somewhere like Waco area at a university. And I'll have to look this up and I'll send it to you. But they were hired to run a study. The study didn't come out the way that they wanted it to. So then they altered the parameters of the study so that the study would show the things that they wanted to. So now you have to look at, okay, the biases of whoever's designing the protocols for these studies, who's designing the protocol, and what is the outcome that they're after. Mm-hmm. And if it's not coming from a non-biased researcher, how can you trust that study?
Right. And what is a non-biased researcher? You know, there's so many ways, so many tricks. I mean, statistics is the art of lying with math, you know, so.
This is true. This is true. But that's why when I look at things, like when I first started doing this carnivore diet, there's no study that's ever going to show that being on the carnivore diet and eating a couple of steaks a day is good for you. I don't think there's ever going to be a large scale study that
just got to get the meat packing industry guys in on this.
However, if you go to Facebook and you look at the World Carnivore Tribe, there's, I don't know, 60,000 plus people there now. And you just look at the success stories of just random people that are beating things like
autoimmune diseases.
Yeah, autoimmune diseases that they have no earthly idea how this is working other than they've just cut out all of the stuff, all of the non-meat stuff. Mm-hmm. And they're feeling better and they're looking better and they're getting out of depression. They're like all of these things that people are going through, just shifting their diet is transforming their lives. Mm-hmm. And that's what, you know, one of the things I love about Jaquish, his wit, number one, he's freaking hilarious. But number two, whenever he posts...
He's also kind of a fun asshole.
He is.
You know
he is totally. And he doesn't hold back online either.
No, he does not.
But the cool thing is that when he posts something about something, whether it's nutrition, whether it's X3, whether it's, you know, whatever it is, he always supports it with studies. And he's like, look, this is where this came from. This is not my opinion. This is the opinion of these studies. So he's super careful about how he puts information out.
He has to be with that kind of attitude.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. But that's what's so brilliant, right? Because it's just supported in like all of the college athletic studies. It shows that using adaptive resistance bands are far superior than traditional weights.
Or in combination with. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yes.
And it's just that's one of the things that's kind of separates him from everybody else.
I agree. So let's talk about your new company, LevelUp, and what's that all about?
Yeah, so one of the things that I noticed in the Osteostrong was it was difficult to stay consistent doing certain things. So we have coaches on the floor that are taking people through sessions, and for us, it's really important to keep notes on everyone that's going through. And we were doing this with kind of paper and pen, and it just wasn't super efficient. And me, when we had to shut down for COVID, we had to shut down for almost 3 months. And that almost murdered us.
I bet.
That was tough. I don't like to sit around, so I'm like, okay, let's create something. And LevelUp was born. I was like, okay, we're gonna get rid of all paper. That's our first step. So then I developed an application. I have a team. We've got, like 8 people on the team now that are helping us develop this application that runs on a tablet. So now we're like, okay, we're going to keep all of our notes and we're going to have everything in this one place. So that was kind of step 1. And then step 2 was, okay, well, how can we also use this to help our members? And so like, okay, well, now we need to capture things like progress. So if you come in and you're doing, a grip strength test or a balance test, we're going to capture all that stuff. And now we want to capture that as often as we possibly can, schedule allowed. But now there's a place for us to capture all this information. But why is this important? Well, number one, we want our members to be able to see their improvement over time, not just on the machines that show your force production, but I also want them to see that their balance is improving, that their grip strength is improving, that the ability to get out of a chair and do a sit to stand, that's improving, or squats or split squats or whatever it is. And then that evolved. That evolved to, okay, so that's helping the member. How do I help the business? How do I help the business improve revenue? And that led into me creating all of these little mechanisms to serve our members better. So what does that mean? If you think of like a marketing system for any given company, everybody's super familiar with lead generation and lead nurturing. There's another piece to that. After they become a client, there's this piece called client nurturing. So how do you ensure that your team is being consistent with every single member going through the system? So then we developed this automation mechanism that says, hey, every time that they check in for like the first 52 sessions, we're going to prescribe what the coach is going to talk about. Mm-hmm. So we have a systemized onboarding process. So now everybody that comes in is going to go through a very systemized, process-oriented onboarding process. So everybody gets everything. And that's from education to additional modalities that may serve them, or just, hey, we want to sit down and do a progress update with you. So there was this big gap. So I just kept filling this gap. Everything that I saw in the center from an operational standpoint, I started building this into the solution, called LevelUp. And then I started taking this to other franchisees. I'm like, hey, I know you have this problem. Check out what this can do for your company. Not only can we help improve retention, but we can also improve revenue. Because one of the key things that, and this is kind of for any business, that if you have 100 people and you ask 100 of those people, hey, we have this really cool thing, this really cool widget, you want to take a look at it? And then some percentage of them are going to say yes. And then some of those people are going to actually purchase that widget. So, but the key piece is that if you don't present it, period, you'll never get to that yes. So we have some incredible supplements that will help people with their bone health. And with this system, you basically create this digital sticky note that when somebody comes in, you get presented with this thing. Say, hey, talk to this person about AlgaCal, and here are the benefits for it. And it's this whole thing of like when you go to the grocery store and you're checking out, you have this impulse aisle, mm-hmm. right? People buy stuff from that all the time. Why? Because it's presented to you. Mm-hmm. If that wasn't there, they wouldn't have bought it. So this is the same concept, except we're doing this a little more integrity, right? We think that the things that we are giving to you are actually going to serve you. But it's our job to make sure nobody falls through the cracks. Because that was the thing. It's like we could ask some of our people, but how do you make sure that you ask every single person? Mm-hmm. So then the question became to these new Osteostrong owners, does every one of your members know about every single product, service, and promotion that you offer? The answer is no.
Of course not.
So then this solution solves that problem to make sure that you have a systemized way to make sure that every single member has access to all of those things.
Mm-hmm. And so it sounds like you're working with many different franchises then, helping them out. Is that doing what you think it should do? Is that going well?
Yeah, it's going great. Everybody loves it. That's so great. And this is only growing. So the next thing that we are going to do is we're going to tackle all of the small things. Like one of the latest things that we just built in a DocuSign piece to where if we're going to sign a contract or a media release or whatever it is, I can just click a button and LevelUp. It generates the agreement, pre-fills out all the information, and the person just signs it with their finger. You hit save, and it automatically gets stored in a folder securely. Mm-hmm. Which sounds like a small thing, but it was a huge deal. But it's like all of these little things that just stack over time, all of these little features that completely transform a business. Mm-hmm. And this is something that I love because I get to be creative. And I get to look at things and come up with ideas and work with all of these owners and get feedback from them and say, hey, fill in the blank. It would be really cool if LevelUp could do X. And then we just work with all of our owners and we just keep making this thing better and better and better.
So this seems like you could kind of cookie cutter it in multiple different types of wellness industry type, maybe franchise, maybe not, but gyms, let's say, or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the special things about this particular industry, the wellness industry, is that we get to see people face to face frequently. And that doesn't really happen inside of like a doctor's office or other things like a dentist.
Right.
That would be bad. But if you're doing things like a chiropractor or a physical therapist, or you have something like that, that lends itself perfectly to this type of solution. So yes, 100%. So this is kind of like the next step of where do we take this from here? How can we help even more people?
Like spas, let's say, or whatever.
Yeah, it could be anything that wants to track progress and make sure that their members can see progress, improve retention,
okay, so
improve
maybe
revenue.
Spa is not, I'm really good at relaxing.
Yeah, it would definitely be more towards like a physical therapy / chiropractor type of thing. Mm-hmm. Yeah, what I'm looking for is I'm looking for how can I create the biggest splash? And I know that the bigger the splash that I can create, the bigger ripple effect that I'm going to have. So at Osteostrong, at the center, it's awesome. Because if you come in and you do your session and you walk out and you feel great, you are going to impact the people around you in that positive way. And you multiply that by 200-300 people, we're creating a pretty big impact. Mm-hmm. Now, with the software solution, I'm taking it one step further back and saying, okay, what if we help the owners, help the coaches, which helps the members? What does that ripple effect look like? So then this ripple effect becomes bigger and bigger and bigger. It's like, and when I was talking about the example earlier of being a doctor or owning the hospital, how many more people can I help?
I'm guessing more than a couple.
More than a few.
Yeah. All right. So how do people find you, and how do you find Osteostrong and all the goodness?
Yeah, so Osteostrong is easy. Just go into Google, type in Osteostrong. It'll take you directly to the website. If you want to find me, come knock on Robert's door. Come find me. Now, I'm really terrible at self-promotion, so...
Well, here's your big chance.
Yeah, I'm hanging out on Facebook, so you can hit me up on Facebook. You just search my name, Deepak Suthar, and I'm the only one in Austin that has an Osteostrong. So it'll be really easy to find me.
And X3 is the other one we should mention.
Yeah, so if you're interested in taking a look at this X3, you should, number one, just Google it and just look at people's results and just understand how people are transforming their lives. And if you are interested in buying it, you get to save $50 by using code Austin.
Cool. Well, thanks, dude. This has been great. I really, really hope that more people find their way over to your spot there and start trying it out. There's a lot of people who could definitely use some greater bone density.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, man. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah. Thanks so much.